Philllipsburg Land Use Board meeting, January 25th, 2024.
Act by posting the notice on the bulletin board in the municipal building, by publishing in the Express Times and the Star Ledger, the official papers of the town of Philllipsburg, by posting on the website of the town of Philllipsburg, filing said notice with the town clerk of Philllipsburg, as well as furnishing said notice to those persons requesting it pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. As advertised, action may be taken at this meeting. Board policy is of the town of Philllipsburg Land Use Board not to hear any new cases after 10 p.m. and no new witnesses after 10:30 p.m. Flag salute. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All the new appointees, please step out to the center.
Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Manny Brett,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and the governments established in the United States
and the governments established in the United States
and in this state
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform all the duties of the office of Land Use Board.
try to justly
And I will justly perform
perform
all the duties
all the duties
of the office of Land
office
Use Board.
of the Land Use Board.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I was pretty stretched out.
Okay. Kelly, roll call.
Mr. Bond.
Here.
Mr. Branch.
Here.
Mr. Brocksman.
Here.
Mr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Hannis, wrong person. Mr. Mold.
Here.
Councilwoman Collis. Here. Mr. Penrose.
Here.
Mayor Piazza.
Here.
Mr. Turnbull.
Here.
Mr. Zegra.
Here.
And Mr. Swiffer.
Here. Okay. Mr. Zwicker, would you please take over?
Yes. Nominations for chairman. Let's open up the board.
I'd like to nominate Bill Duffy.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations for chairman? Any other nominations for chairman? That being said, roll call or just all those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Any against? There being no? Mr. Chairman, would you take back over?
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. Nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Keith Swicker.
I'll second that. Any additional nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Not opposed?
I'm going to, nominations for board secretary?
That would be Kelly. I nominate Kelly Olson.
Second. Okay, any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Recording, appointment of recording secretary? Any motion? Kelly.
Kelly again?
Second again.
Nominate Kelly.
Okay. And you seconded, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. Any other motions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Well, we're going to skip the next two. Nomination or motion to appoint the attorney.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint the existing attorney and the existing engineer,
Okay,
if that's all right. I think we have to do one at a time.
I don't think we have to do one at a time.
I'll second it.
You second? Any other? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Ayes have it. Timothy, you can join us. Scott, you can join us.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Did everybody get a chance to look at the dates for the upcoming year? Okay. I need a motion for adopt the scheduled meeting dates and times.
Motion.
Second. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next one, a redevelopment committee assignment. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Swicker to chair that and to report next meeting on who's the members are. If you'd like to be on it, please talk to Vice Chair. I need a motion to make the official newspapers, the Express Times and the Star Ledger.
Motion. Motion. Second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to adopt the Robert Rules of Order as parliamentary procedure.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I thought once we appoint. Okay. Okay, that takes care of reorganization. Resolutions, we have none tonight. Completeness, we have none tonight. Hearing, 170 Howard Street. I am going to recuse myself for this.
Just a real quick point.
Yep.
Before we get there, minutes from the last meeting? Or we take
Did I miss it?
They're going to be towards the bottom.
We're almost-
Change the order on me.
A little bit, yeah. Next time it'll go back to the normal.
Sorry. Good evening.
Hold on one second, please. Are there any
I
other
have their
issues?
CVs, I will pull up and have them do the testimony.
You can sit here. Yeah, okay. Do we have any other recusals? Okay, anybody else? Okay, 2 recusals, you got that?
Who are they?
Mr. Dunn?
And, okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Good evening. Brian Tippin here on behalf of Braun Construction LLC. And we're here for the preliminary final site plan approval for the construction of a 227 square foot warehouse. This is in your Riverfront Redevelopment Area District 5, property located at 170 Howard Street, approximately 31 acres. By way of background, this is an amendment from a prior approval where the warehouse was 420,000 square feet. It's an approximate 100,000 square foot reduction. Notice was published and served to all properties within 200 feet. And tonight, by way of witnesses, we have Rob DeBeer, who's going to give a little bit of history on the project since it's been before you multiple times. We have Brad Bowler, who's going to do the site plan testimony. We have John Witchner, who's going to do the traffic testimony. John Takina, who's going to do the planning testimony. And John Menino on the architecture plans. Mr. O'Brien prepared a review letter December 22nd of last year. It was a long letter, and we worked our way through it to try to comply with everything that we could. So we're going to comply with everything in his letter. And in a manner to make this more efficient, Bowler put together this 5-page letter, which was handed out to you earlier tonight. I'm going to mark that A1 for the record, and the witnesses are going to use this 5-page letter to go through their testimony to address testimony, explanations, clarifications, anything that needs to go a little bit beyond the things that we're automatically agreeing to in Mr. O'Brien's letter. With that being said, would you like to swear all the witnesses at once?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have another copy of that letter?
Yes.
Oh, never mind, here we got it. Good.
Who's got it?
Good, yeah, thank you.
This one's for the record.
It's on the top.
It's on.
It's showing green.
Okay. Yeah,
It's probably just not telling good enough into it, so. So yeah, all the witnesses identified, please come up, be sworn in.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth to the best of your ability, so be God. Thank you.
Rob, you're up first. Mr. DeVere is going to give you just a brief history of how we got here tonight.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. So as Brian said, I'll kind of just give a brief summary of how we got to this point and then turn it over to the professionals so we can go through the technical review. Some of you may remember me from this plan meeting before the board on a number of occasions. For the new folks morning, congratulations. As Brian said, the Howard Street project site, we're here for an amended site plan approval. This board previously approved this site for a 420,000 square foot warehouse along Howard Street. In the time since that approval, we had entered into an agreement to sell this property in 2022 to a national cold storage operator. That operator had a requirement for a rail connection, as some or a portion of their business was going to be served through rail. Because of that, we went through a fairly laborious process with our engineering staff as well as the Belldale Railroad, who operates the short rail connections to the Norfolk Southern line, working to make sure that we had a consistent grade and to get everything technically and from an engineering perspective to be able to make that connection. Once we got to that point and we had that resolved, we had submitted this plan that's before you and then the subject of this review letter from Mr. O'Brien. In the intervening time since 2022 to now, unfortunately, we're no longer under agreement with that user. They have located their 330,000 square foot warehouse elsewhere. However, we are presently in discussion with a similar user type, not under agreement, but hoping that comes to fruition. As Brian said, we are in receipt of the review letter. We had a chance to meet with the professionals, Mr. O'Brien, as well as the fire chief. Went through these sort of in a line by line. By and large, we are able to comply with just about all of the comments that are on here. What we wanted to do, and as Brian said, our office prepared sort of an abridged letter that identified those sort of areas that we felt warranted discussion or required testimony per Mr. O'Brien's letter. So what we'd like to do is go through the technical review, answer those questions, provide that testimony, and then certainly if there are any questions from the board and the public, we'd be happy to, myself or any of our representatives, to come up and answer them. So that's sort of the brief history, how we got here to seek this amended site plan approval, and I can turn it over to Mr. Bowler, Brad Bowler.
So with respect to qualifications, I know you have the CV, and then you testified before.
Absolutely. I would recommend I'd recommend that we stipulate to Mr. Bowler as
Yes.
an engineering expert.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to do this one in Scott, I say Exhibit 2.
Yes. Mr. Bowler's CV is at A2.
This will be A3 then, Mr. Long, right?
Yep. And then you can just identify for the record.
Sure.
First exhibit is an aerial exhibit, north is to the top of the page. The site is currently shown in red on the bottom half of the page, and then Howard Street shown along the north side on the top of that red area, just for orientation purposes. And this exhibit is dated today's date, which is the 27th of January. Similar exhibit to the last application we had prepared. So the site is identified as block 2102, lot 202. Address is 170 Howard Street. Again, it's in District 5 of the RRA 5 zone. It's approximately 31 acres. Again, just fronted on Howard Street. There are two other intersections that come into the site. Stockton is to the west, about the middle part of the property. And then you have McKean Street, which is at the corner of the right side of that property, so for orientation purposes. Generally, the area in this location is an industrial area, so north and east there's industrial uses in that location. On the west side, just to the left of the plan, is the gun range that's down at that location. And then the park that's just to the south or the southwest of that location. Currently, site's generally undeveloped. There was previously development on the property. You can see old foundations if you go to the property. There are a number of access points that do enter the site, mainly gravel driveways and curb breaks, but nothing currently active on the property. We do have an LSRP for the site, so one of the items that we go through with LSRP is they guide us on environmental requirements for our development, whether that's plantings, capping, etc., and they're providing guidance during the development process. From a topographic perspective, the site does slope pretty well from Howard Street down to the river, so down to the Delaware River. There currently is generally a wooded area, but a buffer that's required along the park area that's part of the ordinance or redevelopment code. We'll get into that when I show the exhibit, but we are removing some of the portions of the buffer and reestablishing it as part of our development. So the next exhibit I'll show is A4, and this is just a reference point for the board, and it's the previous approval. So again, north is to the top of the page, Howard Street's on top as well. And again, this is not for the application tonight, this is just for reference for the board. Tan was the proposed building. You have gray areas where are asphalt or sidewalks, and then green space and landscaping shown in this plan. Again, this just shows the orientation that we previously had. I'm just going to leave it up, I guess, at the bottom of the exhibit so that the board can see what we previously had proposed. So
Just so the record's clear, I want to make sure we've got overall site plan layout. C301, what's the date on that?
8/25/22.
Thank you.
All right, and then my next exhibit will be the actual proposal for tonight, A5. And this exhibit's dated today's date,
Thank you.
1/25/2024. So similar orientation for this exhibit as well. North is the top of the page. You got Howard Street running east-west on the top of the page. Same color configuration as well. So the building's a tan color. The asphalt areas are gray. Concrete areas are gray. Then you have landscape areas. The brown areas on this exhibit are bioretention basins, so that's like mulch that would be shown there, just for orientation purposes. So that's a really good way to identify where the stormwater basins would be for the project. So for this proposal, it's 328,000 square foot approximately industrial building. As a reminder for the board, the previous approval was 420,000 square feet. The main change to this building was because of the rail access. We actually had to flip the building. So the previous approval had the truck courts facing down towards the river. We flipped those around now, and they now face towards Howard Street. That is a variance as part of the redevelopment plan, as part of our orientation. But this is the only way that we could get the rail access to the site. And the rail access is on the south side or the bottom side of the building. So from a rail perspective, you can see the light gray area that comes up along this side, then comes back in. The rail siding is the bottom of the building at that location. So this is only going to be accessed by a train, the rail that's at that location. From a siting perspective, the building's set about 170 feet from the Howard Street front yard. That's a compliant setback from an ordinance perspective. We have 139 feet to the Delaware River side of the property. That's also compliant. And then we do have a park setback of 57.9 feet. That is a variance, again, with regards to the 100-foot setback required of the park. The guiding factor on that is just, again, the rail access for that layout. And that's a new variance that was required by the new code. We have outlined the design guidelines for engineering practices on this development, and we intend to meet those criteria. So from a guideline perspective, and that's code section 51012, we would meet those criteria as part of our application. And then this project is slated to be built in one phase and one construction cycle. You know, that's one of the requests from the engineer to identify that. As of right now, we intend to build the building as well as majority of the site work, if not all the site work at one time, and not phase the project. From an access perspective for traffic, cars and trucks, we have two driveways. One is to the west side of the building, and one is to the east side of the building. The east side of the building driveway aligns with McKean Street, so it's a T intersection as proposed, and the western driveway is a normal driveway into the site. The widths of the driveways are 35 feet wide. That's to allow truck traffic to enter into the facility, where 30 feet is allowed from a code perspective. That was a previously granted variance for the application. And then the width of the overall driveway itself, where the curb drop is, so where the curb hits the street, it's 140 feet wide at its biggest spot, where 40 feet is what was allowed. Again, that was also a previously granted variance as part of the application. From a pedestrian perspective, access to the site, we do have a sidewalk on the entire frontage of Howard Street. That's maintained from the previous approval, and we have ADA accessibility into the property from two locations. So we allow for pedestrians to be able to walk into the facility, access the office space on the site. We don't have necessarily some sidewalk along the car parking areas, and that's a design waiver that's required. And that's mainly because of the addition of trees and landscaping to enhance those areas. The board we're happy to put the landscape back, or sorry, the sidewalk back, but we thought the landscape was a better option for us at that location. And then finally, we have a fire loop road that goes around the back side of the building. And working with the fire department, they asked for a paved surface around the back, so that's the gray area. It runs along the bottom side of the building. 24 feet wide as proposed. That is a design waiver from the code where 30 feet is allowed. We spoke with the fire department and they're okay with that deviation, mainly because this is chained off. Only the fire department has access to this area or the police if they need to get back there. But there's no customers, there's no employees driving back from that location. It's purely just for emergency access at that location. We have two parking lots for the facility, car parking lots for this facility. And they're on the east and west side of the building. 215 parking spaces are proposed at 9 by 18 feet. Where we need to, we have a 2-foot overhang where landscape areas are, so that's allowed and provided by code. The parking space requirement is a variance in this condition, however. It's 368 parking spaces are required for the warehouse and office component. So we have that deviation from last time. I would say this is a new variance because the calculations have changed with a smaller building, but and a little bit less parking spaces. But regardless, it's still a variance that we're requesting. There was a request to understand, we had a variance previously granted about whether or not the parking lots will be completely constructed prior to occupancy. And I would suggest that the car parking spaces would be constructed for use of the staff members or maybe a visitor that may be coming to the facility. But a tenant that might come in here might ask us to base pave the trailer spaces that are to the west side of the property in the event that they have to do some modifications from a tenant perspective. So that was how the variance was granted last time, and we're requesting that variance again from a parking perspective. From a loading perspective, again, we mentioned the loading spaces, or sorry, docks are facing north towards Howard Street. Similar to the last application, the loading spaces range between 4 feet below grade on Howard Street and 15 feet below grade. So the actual loading docks are lower than the street itself in those locations. We do have 80 dock positions potentially for this facility, where 5 are required. The size of the dock spaces is 13 feet wide by 60 feet long. That was a variance that was previously granted because the code required a 15-foot wide loading dock. So this is a standard requirement for industrial buildings at 13 feet wide. So we would request the variance again. And there's another variance for loading spaces because there's no dedicated space for FedEx truck, something along those lines, to load these locations. Again, the variance that was granted last time, but we're asking for it again. We do have, theoretically, have loading spaces for the industrial building, but a FedEx truck would park in a parking space or in front of the front door temporarily while we drop off packages. From a stormwater perspective, this is an improvement from the previous application. We went from 64.5% coverage down to just about 55% coverage for the facility. So we are proposing about 10% less impervious coverage for this facility. In addition to the reduced reduced building side, we do propose to meet all DEP criteria for the stormwater regulations for reduction and water quality. We also propose to meet the BMP manual, which is the best management practices manual that DEP regulates as part of that process. There were a few clarification items that Mr. O'Brien requested from the DEP, so we're working towards that to provide that to Mr. O'Brien, but we would work through that as part of our condition of approval with the engineering side design. One of the other requests that we had was to provide hydrocarbon filters as part of the inlets in the truck areas, and we agreed to do that as part of our approval as well, just in the truck location areas. From a utility perspective, service to the site is via underground utilities, electric, gas, water, sewer. There's a transformer proposed the west side of the building, so it's in between the driveway on the west side of the building. There's a little tan box, hard to see, I'm sure, from that far away. That's the transformer location that we proposed for this facility. If another transformer was required, we would propose it similarly in the landscape island to the east side of it as well. This will be dependent on the utility company, but the request from the fire department and Mr. O'Brien was to keep those transformers away from the building so that they're not next to the building, and we would accommodate that request. From a water perspective, we still propose an upgraded system along Howard Street. One of the requests of the fire department was to provide a larger water main along Howard Street. That would be designed by the water company. We agreed to pay for and install that service. And we also have a loop around the building as well from a service perspective, from a fire access, and that provides hydrants in accordance with the request of the fire department. The fire department in their review letter has indicated that our hydrant locations have been approved as well. So we're acceptable there. And then finally, we have two fire department connections similar to the last approval, remote from the facility, and that's at the upper left-hand corner of the building and the upper right-hand corner, and they're near fire hydrants, so the department can connect in pretty easily at those locations. I'll jump into lighting and then landscaping as my last section. From a lighting perspective, we have similar lights that we had last time. They're 30-foot high LED lights, freestanding lights. We have outside shields, so those are the shields that prohibit the light from spilling over the property lines along the lights that are on the border of the property. The building mounted lights are about 26 feet high with similar fixtures, so they're both LED fixtures as well. For our design, we have no spillage of any kind of light along the entire property. So the park itself, start with the park on the left side, there's no light spillage along that property line. Along the rail side near the basin on the bottom of the plan, no spillage, and that wraps around all the way up to the driveway. At the driveway, we do have light overlapping to promote safety at those locations, so we do have a design waiver from a light spillage at the driveway itself. But then along Howard Street as well, similar situation, no light spillage along Howard Street until we get to the next driveway, where we have another light there for promotion of safety at those locations, as we do have crosswalks and vehicles interacting. From a landscape perspective, we do propose over 700 trees on the site as part of the development. About 97 shade trees, 615 evergreen trees, and over 2,300 shrubs for the facility. All of those landscape material will be maintained by the owner as part of our development. There is, again, I mentioned before, a small area that we are replanting from a buffer perspective along the park. And if you look at the rendering, it's the basin just to the west of the proposed building. There's a clearing in that area, and we are proposing evergreen trees and deciduous trees in that area to reestablish that buffer as part of our development. With regards to the parking landscaping, We do have about half of our trees within islands as best we could, but we do have a couple of spaces along the western side where we have sidewalk and lights. We couldn't put deciduous trees in those locations, so we do have a design waiver from providing all the island with trees in those locations. With regards to a request by Mr. O'Brien, there was an ask to provide additional deciduous trees along the western parking lot with this green space here. We can agree to add more deciduous trees there. And then there was also a request to add a number of additional evergreen trees along the eastern portion of the driveway, the frontage, so that provides additional screening for the loading docks. So we're happy to do that as well. We'll work with Mr. O'Brien to kind of nail that down and figure out what trees will be there and work through location so that we can fully screen the loading areas. And then finally, there was a note about this, the wall sign being non-compliant. We would withdraw that request again, have a non-compliant wall sign. We propose a 1,400 square foot wall sign, one wall sign at this point, and that would be compliant with the code from our perspective. Besides that, we did review the latest fire department review letter. It appears that he's agreeing with our meeting, but we would agree to comply with all those comments in that letter. And then from an engineering perspective, in Mr. O'Brien's letter, we noted in our response letter, the last page, page 5, there's 4 comments that we were asking the board to allow us to waiver on. From a comment perspective, one is to provide ADA accessibility to the trailer parking spaces. Typically, this is not an accessible route. We just had a regular concrete curb, sidewalk, and crosswalk at that location with proper signage, but we didn't put a ramp or truncated domes just because it's not really an accessible route. And then there's 3 comments about the Howard Street extension, and we don't have a proposal for that on our plan tonight, so we would request a waiver from providing those comments as well. And that's all I have for direct testimony.
Brett, so for Howard Street, it's more that it's not included in this, but potentially the applicant has a condition of any future redevelopment agreement to address Howard Street improvements if required.
Question for Rob.
Yeah, so similarly to the approved plan that we had for the original 420,000 square foot building, our plan, as you see it, does not propose the Howard Street extension. As a matter of fact, we don't own that property, we don't control that property, we don't have an ability to compel the seller to provide us that property to make it part of this. Because we are not proposing to do the Howard Street extension, that's why we acquired 2 additional properties at the corner of South Main and Keene Street, 560 and 562, which is part of this plan, which shows traffic improvements we can make to that intersection to allow appropriate traffic movement. So all of the planning that's been done here and the traffic testimony is based solely upon this site being accessed with the existing public streets that exist in the town.
If Howard Street was to be built, would there be accommodations made with site revisions to accommodate the design needed for Howard Street extension?
If that's something that ever happens and we are able to help offset, like you said, the stormwater, or if there's room on the site, we would be amenable to doing that, but again, that's not something we're proposing.
Okay. Is it one of the comments just has to do with the grading proposed and potential conflict? Thank you. Brad, if you could just clarify who's making the railroad improvements into the site?
Oh, sure. So we schematically have a design worked out with the railroad company. Basically, once the tenant comes on board and they're asking for rail, the rail company comes in and builds their own rail line. So we'll grade it, provide the ability to have them install their own line, but they install everything. They do their own work. They actually even do their own design for it. So we just show it schematically right now, but it's been designed and approved by the rail company. It just hasn't been finally construction document ready. And that's being built by the rail company.
And if I can understand it, so we're having really quick with Beldell, which is the local operator. As Brad said, we worked pretty exhaustively with them to make certain that we had a rail design that worked both from an engineering perspective from our site, but also worked from a practical perspective for the end user as well as for the rail company. And that when this gets built, presumably by us as part of the construction of the overall facility, they would then, in agreement that they would operate that and essentially take whatever product or trains that come off the site that allow us to then connect to the existing north and southern network.
Thank you.
You want to offer the fire chief letter? What's the reference to?
The latest letter I have from the fire chief is January 19th of this year.
We'll make A6.
Sure.
Just want to double check my notes real quick.
And as you're looking at Tim, just to confirm again, that A6 will confirm that on record that will file this letter.
Can you just provide testimony as to the status of the flood hazard permit in terms of amending the site layout?
We have correspondence today with DEP. It sounds like they're getting ready to issue the permit, but as of right now, we've gone back and forth with a few minor comments on some calculations, and I'm hopeful it gets issued in the next 6 weeks, plus or minus.
While he's looking through that, I just want to clarify with you, so we can get to this problem. If you look at page 7 of Tim's letter, under the variances, would you agree, he's listed 13 potential variances. He's got A through M. Would you agree that everyone except for G is a variance that you need to pursue? Or you're asking for, I should say?
Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep.
I leave it up to Tim to say that F needs a variance. I believe we had it last time, but if we're able to address that, it's fine. I'm happy to ask for that again. G, I agree with you. We provided testimony on that. And then L, we agree that we will not need to seek a variance for the signage. That's on page 9.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Just clarification for F, just you had previously been approved for that variance, so I've carried that forward for this application.
Okay, thank you.
And then on the design waivers, if from your comment correct, it looks like you're seeking a permanent waiver for number 2A on page 9,
Yes,
and B and C.
yes, so all 3 of those are previously granted.
Yep. And then not again until K. Do you agree? Permanent waivers.
Make sure I get this right. I don't believe we need waivers for F, G, H, J, or K.
Okay. Then how about the last 4?
We will take care of L, so that will not be a waiver. For M, I believe we're compliant, but that may have been a grant previously a waiver, so if we can address that, we ask the board to grant, if we can address it, we will certainly do that.
You provided testimony, Brad, for any that you may not be able to comply 100% of the time.
Right. If we can comply, we will try to do that.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
okay.
And then the rest are waivers that we were asking for, yes.
Okay. That's all that I have. Thank you.
I don't have any further questions for Brad.
Any questions from the board? We have next time.
Okay, so for our next witness, it's John Wichner for traffic. I believe you also have his CBA.
Yes, again, Mr. Vice Chairman, we're
Yes.
familiar with him. We have a CBA, I recommend to take him as a traffic expert. And Mark is a 7 from Philllipsburg.
Good evening, John Wichner with McMahon, a Bowman Company. I think Mr. Zavir did a good job in kind of stepping back a little bit regarding the history of this project. From my perspective, I have a very similar history. When we did the traffic impact study for the previously approved project, the building was 420,000 square feet. We had a traffic impact study. We applied trips to the surrounding roadway network. We looked at levels of service and intersection efficiencies, and we developed a number of improvements that were discussed as part of the last application. As Mr. DeVere had mentioned, there are 2 properties that have been purchased at the intersection of McKean Street and South Main Street to allow for easier turning movements for anticipated vehicles. Along with that were because of the physical widening of that intersection, some pedestrian and signal upgrades. And then lastly, as was discussed with the board during the previous approval, there was the proposal for a no left turn on a northbound approach of McKean Street for trucks into the rest of the town, making them all perform a right turn movement. Of course, the applicant does not control that sign. That would obviously need to be as part of approval from the town. Here we are with a building that's 328,000 square feet. So the building has shrunk 22%. The trips have been reduced 22%. The only thing that has not been reduced are the improvements, so the off-site improvements. So those are still a part of this application. The purchase of those 2 properties, physical widening to allow for right turn movements, a van of trucks making a left turn movement from McKean onto South Main, and then also pedestrian and signal improvements that were related to the physical geometric improvements there at that corner. As part of the traffic study, the updated traffic study that was submitted, no surprises, less trips, less impacts, but keeping the same improvements. We're showing adequate levels of service at the intersections within the study area. Just in terms of some numbers, because the building has shrunk 22%, again, the trips have shrunk 22%. So in the previous application, we had about 350 vehicles coming to the site, and then 350 vehicles exiting the site. Again, 22% reduction with the smaller building, 279 entering vehicles, 279 exiting vehicles over the course of the day. Similar to trucks, in the previous application, approximately 125, 126 trucks entering the site over the course of a day, 126 trucks exiting. With the reduction in the building, we're now under 100 trucks per day entering and exiting the facility. One of the other aspects of the traffic study that to me indicates that the traffic study is conservative in nature, still works from a level service standpoint, still providing those improvements, but as Mr. Bowler had testified to, was the introduction of the rail spur to the building. Our traffic study, because the rail usage is relatively speaking tenant specific, we didn't take a credit for less trips and more rail usage as part of this traffic impact study. Inherently, with the usage of the rail, there would be less trucks than I just even indicated, but that is one of the benefits of this new plan that we see here before us tonight. Also with the traffic study, and I'll kind of go through some of Mr. O'Brien's request for testimony on a number of different items. Typically went through typical industry standards for the traffic impact study. We do counts of existing intersections. We apply growth factors to look at future traffic conditions without the site. We had studied specifically the peak hours of 6 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. Those are actually expanded peak hours to capture school traffic and other traffic in the area. Typically, we study 7 to 9 a.m., 4 to 6 p.m. That's the traditional peak hours that we studied. We're still finding that the peak hours of the roadways in the study area are falling between 7 to 9, 4 to 6, but we want to expand those hours. We then apply the trips from a distribution perspective to the roadway network to determine future with development conditions. We then are able to compare apples to apples, future without the site versus future with the site. And we apply letter grades, much like in school, A being the best, F being the worst, to each of these different intersections and movements. For each of the intersections within the study area, we're at level of service C or better on all movements at the intersections. In addition, as I mentioned, from an operational standpoint, that increased radius and right turn movement on northbound McKean Street onto South Main Street, really intended for trucks to head over to the east in conjunction with the no left turn truck ban that was discussed in the last application. As far as some other items, as I mentioned, we do not take any credit for the rail existence. Again, very tenant specific, but we wanted to make sure that even if there was zero rail, that our traffic numbers, our traffic comparisons still work. In terms of some other questions regarding the traffic signals within the study area that Mr. O'Brien had, there are pedestrian accommodations, what we like to call in the industry the hand-man indicators for pedestrians crossing intersections. We would certainly at the intersection of McKean Street and South Main, those would be revised and upgraded as part of some of the geometric improvements as we get the design approved and the traffic signal design approved at that intersection. In terms of on-site queuing, on-site maneuverability, I did review the site from a truck maneuverability standpoint, the ability for trucks to get in and out of the loading docks. Very comfortable with that design. There are currently no security gates or any other gates on site which would prevent vehicles from Howard Street getting onto the site until such time that they're waived on. That may be a tenant-specific request, but there is an opportunity on site, further into the site, to place any kind of guards or gates so vehicles do not queue on Howard Street. That's certainly something that Tim had made a point for, and we're designing to avoid that situation. And then likewise, the queuing for exiting vehicles is adequate with the design, the on-site design. There are, as part of some other items that Tim had asked us to address, we do have a county approval process. We are in receipt of a county review letter, much like any other project. That is an outside agency that we will be working with the county on to address their comments as we move forward through the process. And as Mr. DeVere had mentioned, our traffic study utilizes existing roadways as well as the improvements that the applicant has part of this application at the intersection of South Main Street and McKean Street. The aforementioned Howard Street extension, as Mr. DeVere mentioned, we don't own the property, we don't control the property. We're not doing anything to preclude should the Howard Street extension go through. And we want to work with anyone that may come in if that was ever to come to fruition, but certainly not doing anything to preclude it. Our analysis, our levels of service, our turn movements can all be accommodated with the existing roadway network as well as the improvements in South Main and McKean. I believe those are the items that Mr. O'Brien had asked to be presented here tonight via testimony. There are other items in terms of clarifications in the traffic study that we're certainly going to be complying with upon submitting that request and materials to his office. So, Mr. O'Brien, I guess I'll turn it over to you and give you a chance to ask any questions.
Thank you. Can you just clarify that the total trips presented was over a 24-hour period, or is that peak hour?
I'm sorry. The number of trips that I've mentioned, 279 in, 279 exiting, that's over a 24-hour period. If we drill down to a peak hour perspective, we are looking at approximately 63 trips in the morning. That would be 49 entering, 14 exiting. Not surprising because of some of the morning shift there, so about one vehicle per minute. In the afternoon peak hour, approximately 18 trips entering, 48 trips exiting for about 66 trips that are in the afternoon peak hour. Again, coinciding with anticipated shift changes, and again, approximately one per minute.
That's a combination of cars and trucks.
That is a combination of cars and trucks. Specific to trucks, in the morning peak hour, a total of 7 truck trips, 3 entering, 4 exiting. In the afternoon peak hour, 10 truck trips, 5 entering, 5 exiting. Again, those tend to be tenant specific, but all the data that we had used, and we are required to use the industry standard of the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. They have done dozens, and I'd say upwards of 60 to 80 sites of existing facilities across the country, and determine those statistical rates for anticipated trips for proposed sites. And again, those numbers that we were talking about here were certainly higher. The last time we were here, these have now been reduced about 22% because of the square footage being reduced 22%, almost 100,000 square feet.
There wasn't any analysis on train operation, correct? Because that's being proposed by others.
That is correct. The train design and operations would be done by others should, I guess when a tenant identifies the use of that train. I would state that any usage of that rail inherently would take trucks off the road. So one additional train per day, and there's a lot of white papers out there between 10% reduction, 20% reduction in trucks. Again, very site specific, so we wanted to be conservative in our traffic impact study, to take into account those rail operations.
So, Tim, the rail operations, that would be the line that's coming from Pennsylvania in, not the line that goes through Union Square, right?
Don't have the details, but the applicant may be able to clarify if the rail operator provided information.
I don't have that information.
No, I understood, yeah. I mean, we're just driving the traffic. If the rail route is through Union Square, then we have different issues, right? That stops all the traffic in Union Square.
And there potentially is limited jurisdiction of the town over the rail operation.
Correct.
At that signal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as part of it, as they indicated, they didn't provide an analysis for that.
Understood.
But if it is connected to there, there's potential that you could have train cars passing through there. It's unclear how often or.
Right, I mean, right now, it's what? Once every other month or once maybe a month?
I know on the Washington secondary, they're running trains pretty often every day now through there.
Union Square. Free Bridge. The other line goes from where the old rail station is, the green rail station, Mile Bridge, which doesn't affect anything.
The only other comment I have is just the county's traffic review did note potential bridge replacement down the future without an exact date. The route they proposed, the board would not find, I would recommend to the board not to utilize that route proposed by the county. They did ask that the developer work with the town to develop any potential future detour routes as part of the bridge replacement.
Yes, and I think that does come down to a timing issue. The county doesn't have a time frame, for their bridge project. So it's hard to kind of match up, with unknown timing on the county side. But yes, as we previously discussed, the applicant would work with the town. If there was a more desirable maintenance and protection of traffic plan that the town wanted to present to the county, and we could work with that as well.
Thank you. They addressed all my comments related to traffic.
Comments from the board?
Just one question. Where are your trucks coming in from there, east or west?
From a distribution standpoint, we have modeled them all coming in from the east. not through the town from the east.
And what order would you be using?
That would be South Main. It eventually kind of gets down to New Brunswick at 22.
And then using the Keene as the,
That is correct, which was precipitating some of those improvements that the applicant was taking upon themselves for those turning
And
radius.
your morning trips, you said, were how many trips?
Approximately 49 entering vehicles, 14 exiting vehicles, total 63, about one truck.
Trucks and cars?
That is the addition of trucks and cars, specific to trucks, 3 entering, 4 exiting.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have John Menino for the architect testimony. And again, I believe you have received these, you can mark that as exhibit.
And again, Mr. Vice Chairman, I recommend that we, the board stipulate to his expertise. And that's going to be number 8.
We're up to 8.
Yes.
7 or 8?
8. Mr. Whitner was 7. And your CV is 8, so I know that'll be 9.
We'll have 8 and 9.
9.
9. Okay. So hello everyone, I'm John Menino. I don't know, they did a great job. I think Brad did a really good job explaining really the changes from the original application that was approved to this current revised proposal. What I'm here to kind of show you is the aesthetics of the building, just talk about the generalities about the building as a whole. On the easel is the previous building as it was envisioned on the original proposal when it was 420,000 square feet. You can see the positioning of it is much closer up to Howard Street as the loading docks were on the south side of the building during that application. I think Brad had showed that site plan previously. I'm just showing this as a reference. This was provided in testimony during the original application. I'll leave it down here similar to how Brad handled the before and afters. So exhibit A9, or A10 I should say, this is the revised building rendering as it's currently being envisioned. Smaller footprint, 328,000 square feet. You can see that the loading dock area is now on the north side of the building facing Howard Street. So the building has been pulled back away from Howard Street. And you get a better sense of the how the building sits down below the Howard Street elevation. To touch on the building as a whole, the aesthetic, the design, the construction is identical essentially to what had originally been proposed. Insulated concrete panels, painted in various gray tones with a red accent. Same design as what was originally proposed. We have 2 office entrance points that are envisioned, one on the east, one on the west. And as previous testimony noted, 80 loading docks and 2 driving doors along the north side, and then you have rail side along the south side of the building. The building is single story. There is no second floors or mezzanines proposed. It is a fully suppressed facility. In fact, it's considered with an ESFR system, which is an early sensing fast response fire suppression system, which is common for these type of warehouse facilities. The building is going to be providing 36-foot clear height, which again is what the market demands inside these buildings for these type of users. Aside from that, we've articulated the parapets and we articulated the facade to help break up the massing. So it's not one large plain facade through color and variation. And as alluded earlier, currently we're just going to propose one building sign on the building that would be compliant at the 1,400 square foot permitted size. Beyond that, there were some touch points that came up in Mr. O'Brien's review letter. I believe Mr. Bullock, Brad had already alluded to the FDC, or Fire Department Connections. There will be one on the northwest corner, as well as one on the northeast corner. And in addition to that, as part of our standard practices, we would also have a fire department connection at the building where the water enters into the water service room, water sprinkler room. So often you would have a fire department connection there as well. We designed that as part of our fire code and building code standard. With respect to exterior building lighting, again, I believe Brad had alluded to it earlier. We have wall-mounted site lights to provide general illumination to meet the site lighting requirement. In addition to that, on the architectural side, we do have a requirement to have small dual-head light fixtures at every man door for egress and ingress that is required by code. So you have these little lights above those doors or adjacent to those doors that would be required. No additional lighting is proposed beyond those circumstances. There was a question that come up regarding green aspects to the building. As I alluded to, these are highly insulated concrete panels, whether it be tilt-up or precast. The building is designed to meet and exceed the current energy code requirements. A white TPO roof is proposed. Certainly the design the building has been designed or would be designed to meet solar-ready requirements for warehouse facilities for New Jersey mandate. As far as other improvements that can be considered, they would be looked at a tenant fit-up time. So when we do have a tenant, options for low-flow toilets, LED lighting, other factors can be considered as part of the fit-up work at that time. There was also a comment regarding noise and odor, and again, there is no tenant at this time, so really no noise or odor really anticipated, but certainly the regulations and ordinances that pertain to noise and odor would be the responsibility of the tenant to ensure that they meet those ordinances and or provide plans to mitigate any odor or noise nuances that they may be introducing. I believe that kind of touches on everything that we needed to respond to on the architectural side. Mr. O'Brien, certainly if there's anything else that you'd like to ask as it pertains to the architectural building, but
No, it's some just moment comments.
Anything from the board? Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so for our final witness, John Takina, our planner. And again, I believe you have the CV, so that will be Exhibit A11.
Correct. And again, Mr. Vice Chairman, I recommend the board stipulate to his expertise.
Thank you. Very nice of you. Nice to be here. I'm here to talk about the variance and design waiver relief for tonight. As all the other witnesses, the one thing I really do with my testimony is I don't do things twice. So Brad and the other witnesses really did a nice job of laying out all the relief, laying out which relief was new versus old. The two specific variances that are quote unquote new are the provisional loading docks facing Howard Street and the park setback at roughly 59.7 feet as opposed to the required 100 feet. Both of these variances I consider to be C2 variances, where the benefits outweigh any potential detriments. The benefits of both of these variances are they facilitate the rail service. And the rail service really provides this building with many benefits, both for the town as well as for the project as a whole. We heard John talk about the reduction in traffic that's going to come from the rail. That is critically important in terms of reduction in trucks through the town, reduction in traffic overall, with all the previous proposed improvements still proposed. Secondly, it also provides this 320,000 square foot warehouse the opportunity to differentiate itself from all the other 328,000 square foot warehouses that exist, quote unquote, out in the hinterlands. And with how they're being built these days, kind of all over the place, having that differentiation of rail is a very valuable asset and a valuable asset for the town. because when Belleville has customers, other customers are going to be able to be serviced on that rail and provide additional benefits from a transportation standpoint, from a planning standpoint, to your industrial customer base, directly implementing some of your master plan and redevelopment plan goals and objectives. So in terms of the relief, it's certainly reasonable and appropriate from a planning perspective. The design waivers requested, again, are reasonable, complying with them would present somewhat of a hardship. And Brad did a nice job of kind of differentiating between the two that could be provided with, but really it's represents a better planning alternative if the relief is granted. And if the final variance, I guess, the change was parking supply. It has been changed from roughly the same variance that you granted before to just new numbers. That number is still high, frankly. Your ordinance at 1 per thousand is fairly stringent for a parking requirement. Industry standard is about 1 per 2,500. And you typically don't double count the office space. So your standard is very conservative, and we think that even at the proposal, we're well exceeding what we required for the building, which is closer to 130 or so. So we're very comfortable with the 200 plus that are provided, and we think that it is more than sufficient, and that the benefits of granting that, instead of having just more pavement that's not going to be used, or it's going to have other stuff stuck on it because it's not used, certainly outweighs the detriment. We'd rather have more landscaping, more trees, better stormwater management, as Brad testified. So in closing, I think that all these things will implement your master plan and your, most importantly, your redevelopment plan, which was amended for industrial use here because it's appropriate, and I'll be available for your questions.
I do not have any questions for their planner.
Do you have any questions for the planner?
Thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes our testimony, and we'll just turn it over for any questions for the professionals and the public.
Do you have any other exhibits to offer?
No other exhibits to offer, no. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I have a question with regards to traffic. So I'm looking at Main Street, where we know there's a free bridge, right? And the train's coming through there. How many cars do you expect to come through it with regards to the train?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
The
question?
trains that you're proposing that you would use to come through there, how many trains do you suspect would be utilized to come through?
It really is, yeah, it really is attendant specific and the rail operator specific.
But we are increasing the flow of traffic with trains going through that stop by using that service now.
If it goes that way.
If it goes that way, yeah.
Right now, you don't anticipate train going through Center Square?
Yeah, I can speak to this with the personal knowledge. I know that rail heads along the river, goes up to Harmony County where I live. It actually goes past my property. And if you see one train a month, it's actually a lot compared to when I was a kid.
That's why I was wondering if it was coming from the Pennsylvania side and looping up.
I'm 99% certain that's what it's doing, because I see that rail line, from my office.
Yeah, that goes all the time.
Yeah. That's where it's going to be going. It's not going to be infringing on the intersection of freeway.
It won't be, okay.
It should not be unless something drastically changes, but it hasn't been that way for.
Big warehouse in Belvedere.
Yeah, I mean, that rail has weeds growing up in it, trust me.
So one more question. The trucks coming through now, we have trucks coming through. How much more does that increase that flow of truck traffic now? We have trucks come through there, so did you do the analysis on the trucks that were previously there coming through and the trucks now?
We do, when we do our traffic counts, we take a look at, we actually count the vehicle types. So we have passenger cars and we have trucks in our existing counts. We then apply adjustment factors for those types of vehicles that are on the roadway. In terms of our site, we're adding 3 entering trucks, 4 exiting trucks in the morning, 5 entering trucks, 5 exiting site, trucks in the afternoon. I can, if you give me a minute, I can take a look at what some of the existing truck volumes are along South Main Street. But it's, it's 3 entering and 4 exiting in the morning, 5 and 5 in the afternoon.
A minimal impact?
That's correct. I don't believe it will be noticeable by the driving public, but we have to account and adjust our analysis to include those additional trucks, which we have done, and therefore are showing adequate levels of service. Bear with me while I get exactly
Sure.
for you.
Pages and pages and pages. And these analyses were recently done or over what period of time?
We had utilized historical counts from when we originally did the first application. We counted in 2021. We then compared that to historical NJDOT data from pre-COVID, and we looked at adjustment factors, and then we applied additional percentages by that population growth to get them to we had completed the study in September of 2023, so we utilized 2023 traffic volumes as kind of our baseline, and then we look at when we look at future conditions, we compare future without to future with, so 2025 without versus with.
So you're saying what, 2% impact, 10% impact?
We don't necessarily, I can get those numbers as well. What we'd like to do is, we can't necessarily say that 2% is good or bad. We analyze the intersection from an operations standpoint, and we look at delays at an intersection. So the industry standard is comparing delays that a driver experiences. So in the traffic study and I'll give you an example. On table 1.2, so after we go through all of our analysis with traffic counts, we apply our traffic, we apply adjustment factors for trucks, we look at the green times, at all the different signals along the study area, and I'll pick a peak hour. At the intersection of McKean and Main Street, without the development in the afternoon peak hour, the average vehicle experiences about a 13.5 second delay. They may be hitting the intersection on a red light, they may be slowing down to take a turning movement, things like that. With our site, they would be experiencing about a 15-second delay, so it's about 1.5 seconds of that impact between no build versus build conditions. And that would still remain a level of service B, which is certainly an acceptable level of service.
So your peak hours are the 2 peak hour times, right? 9
Yes, correct. We studied 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Right.
And then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Now, when we studied those intersections, we have determined that at many intersections, for example, Stockton and Main Street, the actual peak hour is 8 to 9 p.m. in the morning, 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. At McKean and Main Street, the morning peak hour occurs between 7:45 and 8:45 a.m. The afternoon peak hour occurs between 4:45 and 5:45. So what we're required to do in industry standard is count a wider buffer of time and then look at what is the worst hour in the morning and worst hour in the afternoon. And in fact, because of some of the other adjustments that we're required to take, we actually look at the worst 15 minutes in that worst hour over the course of the day.
Okay.
Yep, you're welcome.
Well,
Not at the peak hours, but what was the volume of truck traffic per day?
And I'll take a particular intersection. So, as an example, at the intersection of McKean Street and South Main Street during the morning peak hour, there's approximately 35 trucks during that peak hour, and we'd be averaging 3 entering and 4 exiting.
So there is no tenant, so we don't know if it's a 24-hour operation or not. So what's the, is there an estimate on the truck traffic per 24-hour period or 12-hour period?
The estimate that I had given was over a 24-hour period. Obviously, if hours, if the tenant chooses to run only 1 shift or 2 shifts, those trucks would typically be lower.
Anyone else? We'll move to the public.
Public comment, anybody can come forward?
State your name. Address.
I got 3 minutes, is that right?
Sure.
David Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights, Philllipsburg, New Jersey. As you know, I do not think the warehouse is a good thing for Philllipsburg, and I think you as the residents care about Philllipsburg, and I hope you see it the same way. The reason for the warehouse being built, some of you may not know because you're new, is because there was a plan to build residential down there. Perone Construction came to the conclusion that because that area is an undesirable place to live and sell homes, because of a gun range on one end and a junkyard on the other end, the solution is to put a warehouse down in the flats. My opinion is the warehouse will lower the value of the homes in the flats, and it will lower the quality of life. The warehouse violates the state warehouse guidelines. It's not close to any major arteries. The warehouse is going to be built in an area already suffering from disproportionate environmental harm. The warehouse will be built in an overburdened community, exactly what the warehouse siting guidelines discourage. The warehouse is going to be built next to a protected resource, the Delaware River. The warehouse is going to be built next to a Green Acres Park. In fact, I believe I heard they're asking for a variance perhaps to build closer to that Green Acres Park. In terms of making a left-hand turn off of McKean, I don't believe that's something the town's going to be able to approve. I believe the DOT will have a say as to whether truck traffic can be blocked on South Main Street. And I don't believe DOT is going to agree with that based on what happened with the current plan for the truck traffic route. Nothing can stop trucks from going down South Main Street. Trucks coming into the warehouse can come from the Free Bridge up to McKean Street and make a right-hand turn. There is nothing to stop them. I'm confused with the counts, the truck counts, and the truck trips. I heard a reduction of 20%. And truck trips on the 420,000 square foot warehouse, the numbers were 200 something a day. It came out, if you multiplied it, it came out to some number around 92,000. A 20% reduction in truck trips, I heard, and that comes out to about 20,300. I'm sorry, 20,300 reduction. That still leaves 71,700 truck trips. I heard another figure of 100 truck trips a day. 100 truck trips a day is 36,500 truck trips a year. So what is the actual number? The fact is they don't have a tenant, so they don't know. In terms of trains and truck trips out, when you have boxcars coming in, that merchandise has to go out. When that merchandise goes out, it most likely is going to be going out on trucks. A warehouse this size, it doesn't make sense for it to be a train transfer station. So you're going to have more trucks going out than just a couple trucks an hour. Please consider the residents. The residents I've walked and I've knocked, and the residents of the flats, on practically every door I've knocked on, with the exception of 2 or 3, do not want any type of a warehouse down there. Thank you very much for your time, and welcome to all the new members. It's great to see you, and glad to see the professionals back on board.
Anyone else? State your name, spell your last name, and your address.
Rita Cotaroli, C-O-D-I-R-O-L-I, address 380 Warren Street, Philipsburg, New Jersey. I'm not familiar completely with this. This is the first time my husband and I have been to one of these town meetings. But after hearing the presentation, I am concerned that there's a lot of unanswered questions. It seems like the traffic report is only taking into account South Main Street and McKean and that area, but what happens if there's unintended consequences with more traffic? Are they going to be coming in from the Free Bridge? Are they going to be coming in from 22? Because if you guys remember recently, there have been a lot of accidents on 22, a lot of accidents. We don't need any more of that. Not to mention, they don't even know where the trains are coming from or going to. Seems questionable. And freight trains aren't really the safest thing anymore. Depending on what kind of cargo they're carrying, they could derail and explode. So I kind of think that maybe there should be more research before the decision is made. Thank you.
I have a quick legal question. You technically have to run this up. I just have a quick legal question. Technically, we have
Identify you for the record.
Lee Clark, 98 South Main Street, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Now, technically, we have 3 council members in the room. By me commenting, would that be a violation of sunshine law before I even go forward?
No, you're not deferring.
You said yes, you said
Who said
no.
yes? No, it's not. This is a public comment. This is a public comment. Go ahead, you're not gonna violate the Sunshine Act.
Okay, it's what?
Yeah.
All right, so Lee Clark. So I'll keep my remarks short. It's never easy to take on an issue that you know you're gonna lose, all right? But being elected, it's not about doing what's easy, it's about doing what's hard. Personally, I just don't think this is right. I'm not against warehouse development. I'm not against capitalism or making money. I honestly believe done right, warehouse development can do a town good. It's just a location that just doesn't work. And we hear the residents every single day complaining about this. We heard it in 2022, we heard about it in 2023, and we hear about it in 2024. I hear them every single day when I'm walking the streets. I live on South Main Street. I hear my constituents complaining about this because they don't want a warehouse. And I know you know I'm telling the truth because my constituents are your constituents. You hear the same thing around town. You heard tonight, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Now, I'm all for bringing jobs. Ever since I was elected, or even as a resident, I'm for bringing jobs here by bringing new revenue, but there's a right way to do it. And I want to work with these redevelopers to bring the right stuff here to Phillipsburg. There's a lot of stuff that we need to develop. We need new parking structures to accommodate a growing population. We need a grocery store. There's so much opportunity. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I personally just don't believe that this is the right thing. You're adding more trucks to the roads. We're trying to work to reduce the amount of trucks on these roads. And at a time in Warren County and throughout New Jersey where you see towns fighting against these warehouses day after day, I in good conscience cannot put my name behind a guest vote for a warehouse. I certainly hope y'all can't either. Thank you. I look forward to the Facebook trolls.
Thank you.
Keith Kennedy, 898 Hill Street. I voted yes for this project back when it was the original cold storage facility because I saw the proof that the rail service was in fact going to be used. My main concern has always been traffic. And the figures I was shown then for the previous cold storage facility, it took care of the traffic issue for me. That's why I voted yes. That's no longer the case. We don't know who the tenant of this building will be. You could put the rail spur in, and whoever the tenant is, they can decide they're not going to use it. So again, you have to refer to this traffic study, and the copy of traffic study that I have on table 5, on page 5, this is showing 197 trucks and 360 passenger vehicles for a total of 557 vehicles. And now they're refer to table 6. Table 6 provides the vehicular trip generation breakdown with the heavy vehicle conversion per Warren County ordinance. Per Warren County ordinance, 1 heavy vehicle is equivalent to 5 passenger vehicles. So on table 6, this is showing a grand total of 1,345 vehicles. So again, my concern is the traffic. My other concern is there's a proposed warehouse on Edge Road and Route 122. So now you're talking, you're going to have heavy truck traffic, possibly all the way from 22 all the way to McKean Street. Now what do we tell the people that reside in Delaware Heights? His only access in and out of town is Carpenterville Road. That's my concern. That's always been my concern with traffic. If someone can tell me and reassure me that the rail is going to be used, I'm all for the project. Until then, I can't. Thank you.
Randy Piazza, 309 Mercer Street here in Philllipsburg. I think I brought this up once before that I'm already for this project back there. I don't know if anybody who's done any real estate value studies down there as far as what kind of an impact it's going to make with this warehouse. But one time at a council meeting, I made the remark, we had a lot of people in here coming up with suggestions on what to do with that property back there. And I told them to buy the property. Buy it off the guy. We have 2 other public officials back here. We haven't heard any ideas from them as far as what they would like to see in place of the warehouse. They keep saying, no warehouse. What do they want? This gentleman over here has been trying like hell to try to get something going here in town, to try to, to try to bring this town around. And we've got people that are just keep constantly saying no. What kind of a town do you want? You got 2 public officials that are sitting back there that just keep saying no, they keep going against everything. And it makes me sick. Thanks.
How are we part of this?
Anybody else?
Good evening. Michael Perucci, Washington Lane, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Philipsburg, spent most of my life here. I bought that property back in, I think, '05. And for 18 years, I tried to make it a residential development. It had been industrial, and I was the genius that tried to, and got it to residential. And for 18 years, we've spent millions of dollars, talked to 20, 30 different home builders. We just could not get it going. I've listened to everyone throughout. We did have a cold storage project. Mr. Marcet filed a lawsuit to tie the property up for 1.5 years. And that cold storage is in Allentown, Pennsylvania, right now. I grew up in Philllipsburg. I listen to all the wrestling matches. I go to all the Philllipsburg football games on occasion. I'm not going to do anything that hurts the town I grew up in, okay? You have my word on that. This project, we reduced it to 320,000 square feet because some of the councilmen wanted rail. I'm telling you, the rail doesn't go through Union Square. That only goes up to Belvedere. There's nothing there. It all comes off North Road Southern. With the McKean Street, if you look at Atlantic States and everything, those trucks can't make the turn in McKean and South Main Street. They have to go around the whole South Main Street, all down the flats. We bought that house to knock it down, so not only will our trucks be able to turn right, but all the other trucks there will be able to turn right, and no one's going through South Main Street. DOT is never going to allow that. The town's never going to allow that. And if you talk about the residents, those districts down there voted for the council people and mayor that were for this project. I think it was overwhelming, as I recall. So I've been down there, I've talked to a lot of people. If we could create 250 to 275 jobs at $25 an hour, at $55,000, $60,000 a year, we've done a great thing in my estimation, because I think the best social program in the world is a job. And we were an avid district, right? We were one of the 30 poorest towns in New Jersey. And when I grew up at Ingersoll Rand, everybody I knew, dads, uncles, grandfathers worked at Ingersoll. It was a great, great town. And they left in the middle of the night, closed the doors, unlike Bethlehem Steel, which was a good community advocate. If you go down to 22 and where Ingersoll Rand, those millions of square feet that they built, just sit there, pull over to the side of the highway, watch how many trucks come out. There's millions of square feet there. There's hardly any trucks coming in and out of there. Okay? This is 320,000 square feet. Like everyone's blowing this, everyone that's opposed to this is blowing this out of proportion. Creating jobs is a really good thing for this community. And I'm very proud to have been in Philllipsburg, and I will never, ever hurt this town. Thank you.
I got a question, Mike. You're not against the master plan about extending Howard and Fair Street if it becomes to...
No, we have no control of that. We're not involved in that. That's up to the town and the state. I mean, if you turn on McKean Street, you're only in Philllipsburg 1,400 feet. So you're in Cohasset.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Colantrell. I own LMR Disposal in town. I live at 2 Merrill Court, COLONTRELLE.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I own AMP Holdings property, and I also own SMP Trucking. It's at the corner of McKean and Howard Street. Mr. Perucci, as he stated, I think it's a great idea. That place has been vacant for so long as a business owner. I totally understand paying a tremendous amount of taxes and not really getting any benefit for it. So I totally get where he's coming from. You know, I am not for the Howard Street extension. It's going to go right through my property, okay? So I will tell you that SMP Trucking and Transportation, I bought from Stephen M. Powell, okay? And at one point in time, at the corner of McKean Street and Howard Street, he ran 60 flatbed tractors and trailers out of that location with the current infrastructure that it has today, without the houses being knocked down. So, you know, I would totally say, from my opinion, being in trucking, I mean, I think he just made a very good point, and it's a realistic point. Go there and look at Ingersoll Rand and count how many trucks come in and out of that place. I mean, and they're millions of square feet. This is a much reduced with the potential of rail. I don't think your impacts are going to be anywhere near what some people may think, but at one point in time, I'm not looking to have my property cut up and divvied up for his benefit either, if that makes any sense. So, you know, I think the plan that he's got put in place, I think it'll be very successful, because again, if you look at historic views of that property, it's a Fayette Street, we call it 17 McKean Street, it's directly across the street from the scrapyard. You will see how many trailers ran out of there, and they were making that tough right-hand turn onto South Main Street. So, you know, I am for the project. I think it will create jobs. It'll clean up you know, there's homeless people that walk through my property that go to his property to put tents there. You know, like realistically, who wants that? You know, let's develop the property, make it look good. It'll increase your tax value. And ultimately, you know, you take that tax value and you turn it back into schools. Good things happen when people have jobs. I'm all about jobs and, you know, trying to create value in a town that particular area needs to be redeveloped. We bought that SMP property, cleaned it up, and, you know, that's what we're trying to do as well, me and my partners. So, you know, that's what I can say. And, you know, I'm totally against the Howard Street extension. So I think he's got a good plan. I think he should stick to it.
Anyone else?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I just want to make it clear so that people think public comment is not stifled. There is no Sunshine Act violation when public officials are, number one, acting as private citizens. They're allowed to speak at a public meeting. There's no limitation on that. The Sunshine Act only applies when a body, a quorum of a body, is acting secretly, quietly, and not at a public meeting and they're conferring about certain things. So any public official is welcome to speak as a member of the public at a public meeting like this. Thank you.
We agree.
Anybody else yet? And I'm closing public comment.
We don't have any further testimony or further exhibits, and we rest our case at this time.
Okay, Mr. Zwicker, I would, you know, I like to do these in parts, and I think the best way to start would be solicit, if anybody's interested in a vote on the 6 permanent waivers that were discussed today, design waivers.
I need a motion for the 6 waivers.
Can you just hit them real quick again?
Sure. Sure.
Please.
Absolutely. So looking at Mr. O'Brien's letter, we have on page 9, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2M, 2N, and 2O.
Good with that?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
So I need a motion.
I'll motion it.
Need a second.
I'll second it.
And before we go any further, I just want to make the record clear too that this is a 9-member board. We have 2 alternates. By the way, identify the alternates for the record, please.
Yes.
Okay, the alternates are Mr. Bond and Mr. Branch.
Okay, and because there's recusals, they can step in and 9.
And as you
Thank
do
you.
your call the 4 members and then alternates by seniority.
We use the alternates first.
You
call them, not the vote.
We always did.
Usually you count the first.
We have done it for, I've always done it that way.
Okay.
And then it goes down the chain, so like the vice chairman's last, he's last.
Is there any discussion?
I'm just saying as far as.
Oh, well, yes.
Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Branch,
Yes.
Mr. Brodsman,
Yes.
Mr. Zagra,
Yes.
Mr. Penrose,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Knoll,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pauls,
Abstain.
and Vice Chairman Swiffer.
Yes.
We have two recusals.
Next, Mr. Vice Chairman, you would be looking to solicit a motion for 11C variances that are set forth in the engineer's letter, township engineers.
Any questions on those variances? If not, I need a motion.
I'll motion it.
Bernie? Second?
I'll second.
John? Penrose? Roll call.
Hold on,
What?
Nope.
discussion?
Oh.
Yeah, ask if there's a discussion.
Well, there was no questions before, I didn't think there'd be a...
Okay, I don't know. So you gotta ask.
No problem. Roll call.
Mr. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Branch?
Yes.
Mr. Brodsman?
Yes.
Mr. Zagra?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Councilman Pauls is abstaining. And Vice Chairman Swiffer?
Well, hold on, ask her if
She want me to ask her, even
Yes,
though,
please.
okay.
Thank you. And then lastly would be a potential motion for amended preliminary and final site plan approval.
Any questions on
We need a motion, solicit a motion
that?
first.
Motion
For the reduction.
Hold on.
Well,
I think we had a discussion with your engineer that the amended term should be taken out. Because the county is seeing it as just a preliminary and final site plan.
Okay.
For drawing title purposes only.
For drawing title purposes only. So from an approval standpoint, I don't know how,
It's still amended, it's just we're gonna, part of the letter was to allow them to remove the word amended from the project title to comply with the county request. Is not to change the application.
I don't care how we do it as long as we're on the same page. This is technically the second amended, right?
yes, I believe
So I don't know how we want to couch that because the board is,
I'm just,
in 2022, there were two.
on the cover sheet of the plans, it says bold amended preliminary final. The county has asked them to drop it, the county will review it. So
I understand. I'm
they can
just-
make the note in the general notes that this is an amended.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page, because in January 27th of 2022, the preliminary and final site plan was approved, and then in September of 22, an amended site plan, and this, I think, would technically be a second amended. Just so we're all on the same page, I don't care how we couch it, so.
It's just changing, it's not changing the title of the application, it's just changing on the cover sheet. We typically indicate the type of,
we think it can be couched as an amended preliminary final site plan approval, and then we'll deal with the paperwork with the county.
Yeah, okay,
Separately.
okay.
I think that's probably the best way to handle it, because to you, it is an amended plan.
Yeah, and I think I want to make it clear in the resolution that this is a second, because I'm going to reference the January of 22 and the September of 22. So I'm going to ask you to call it a second amendment.
Okay, we can figure out the housekeeping as far as the county is concerned. Need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
John, can you move? Second?
I'll second.
You got it.
Yep.
Roll call.
Hold on, discussion,
No,
you want to discuss this?
Any discussion?
Mr. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Branch?
Yes.
Mr. Brodsman?
Yes.
Mr. Zegra?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pauls? Abstain. And Vice Chairman Swiffer?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Chairman?
Make it
Just tell them to beat it now.
I'm taking a couple of hours later. How have you been? Fine, they're keeping the boards?
Yes.
Yes. It's cold store. Great.
Whatever you can make
She'll tell me, she's busy.
I know. My rock hero.
Yeah, we just asked her about it.
I will.
Right down on South Main Street too, so, yeah. How much do you want to an hour?
Good stuff. Thank you. Yeah, so if you want to
Okay.
and then we'll
So Susan will be the one that'll be.
right here. Sure. Boom, boom. We have, I'm sure there's a landscape plan that's on there already with the extent. I'll send you as relates to there. And like I said, what we can do on there, perhaps.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Good to see you.
Okay, we're going to the next thing on the agenda is the new business. We need to direct Van Cleef to review the 540 Marshall Street redevelopment plan that council has sent over to us.
No, you can't.
Planner's job, he do this consistency. It's an engineer's job. We're doing it as a planner. By appointing you as an engineer, can we appoint you as a planner? Scott? By conferring him as the...
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Okay. Because we threw it all together.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
He's
Just
a
making
P,
sure.
he's a PP, so.
Great. So, can I have a motion to direct Van Cleef to review the 540 Marshall Street redevelopment plan that council sent to us?
Motion. Second.
Mr. Bronsman, okay. Yes, discussion?
So this is the third time we're re-reviewing, asking to
Yeah.
have it re-reviewed?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So this is, in calendar year 23, the board and the governing body of the town determined that the property was in need of redevelopment. Correct. The state approved that designation, and now you have to set the zoning standards for the redevelopment plan for that area of need of redevelopment. Council at their last January meeting did the first reading on the ordinance to designate the zoning standards. And then they have to refer it to the land use board to provide a consistency review about those zoning standards because it has implications towards conforming to the master plan.
The
And
last time was if it was dilapidated. Yeah, that thing.
correct, that was the area of need of redevelopment. We
Right,
reviewed the
right.
state criteria to see if it complied.
Correct. Okay, so this is just an extension.
This is not an extension, this is to set the zoning standards of what type of uses will be allowed there to facilitate the redevelopment.
In this ordinance, the town council passed on a first reading, they put in what they believe the zoning standard should be, as a required by law, to send it to this board to make sure that this board is of the opinion that those standards are consistent with the master plan and the zoning ordinance as a whole.
Thank you.
And typically, this board refers it to our expert planner.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be done today.
And in the ordinance, it covers, but not limited to, type of uses, the type of setbacks and coverage, and potentially other bulk or special standards that may apply or relief related to variances.
Okay, you had a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I need to recuse myself as well due to a prior involvement in my previous seat in council.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Branch?
Abstain.
Mr. Brocksmith?
Yes.
Mr. Zegra?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Councilwoman Paulus?
Abstain.
Vice Chairman Swiffer?
Yes.
And Chairman Duffy?
Yes. There's no old business. The minutes from the December meeting. I need a motion.
A motion.
Okay, Mr. Bond, second.
Second.
Mr. Brodsman. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections in the minutes? Now, the only members that can vote are the people that were here in December.
Correct.
So,
I have that all written down, too. Okay, I know Mr. Bond was here.
yeah.
Mr. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Brocksmith?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose wasn't, Mr. Turnbull was. Vice Chairman Swiffer?
Yes.
And Chairman Duffy?
I wasn't here.
And you weren't here.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Motion passes. At this time, we will accept public comment. Anyone from the public has any comments for the board, please step forward, state your name and address. Not seeing any, I'm closing public comment. Does anyone have anything for the good of the board? Again, if anyone wants to be on the redevelopment committee, please see Vice Chair Swicker after the meeting, so he can put together that committee for next meeting. And just so everyone's aware, our process is we have a completeness hearing, 1 month. We have the hearing on the site plan, whether it's final, preliminary, or both, the next month. And then there's a resolution from the lawyer the following month. So it's a 3-month process. You'll be seeing projects on your agenda for 3 months. Okay? I encourage all of you, when you see the agendas and you see the letters from the engineer, at least go around and see where the project's happening. Look at the neighborhood before you come to the meeting. Okay? That's all I've got. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Oh,
Second.
don't.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it.